Good afternoon. Today we are working on PO23. It is a PO, so it's a power objective. So make sure you understand this one. I can find a percent of a whole number. So now we're using the knowledge that we've just worked on. A lot of us were kind of breezing through those previous course objectives. We got it. But now we're going to see how we're going to use that in real life. So perhaps you've been asked some variation of the following. She took 20 shots and made 30% of them. How many shots did she make? Or the test was worth 30 points and she got a 90%. How many did she get correct? Or maybe the bill at the restaurant was $40 and I left a 15% tip. How much was the tip? Okay, these are things that happen in the real world. You go out to a restaurant and you have to figure out tips. Jessa?
Last night, Penelope and I went to Applebee's with my mom,
Mhm.
and I was talking to Penelope how my mom always leaves a 15% tip, and then I watched her do it on the calculator.
Yeah, and if you don't have a calculator, if you don't have your phone's died, you got to be able to do it in your head. Or be able to quick jot it down on a napkin to figure it out. So we don't always have our phone with a calculator on it at the ready. We need to know how to be able to do it and what the math is behind it. Maddie.
This is actually first because my dad's teaching us, he won't let us use the calculator when we're at a store. It's 20% off. We have to figure it out ourselves.
And that's what I do when I'm at the store and there's sales and it says 20%. I'm not going to waste my time taking my phone up, doing the math. I do the math in my head real quick. The more you do it, the easier it comes. So you can figure out, do I really want that shirt? It seems like it would be a good deal, but is it really? So figure out those sale percentages. Be able to do that in your head. So when you go shopping, it makes sense to you. And if you're like, oh, I have $50 to spend, if I find all these on sale or on clearance, how money can I get in order to be able to pay for it with my $50? I got a gift card. I want to be able to use it. I need to be able to figure that math out quickly instead of pulling that calculator out every time. So let's work on this. So let's answer the questions above using 3 different methods. So when we're looking at the shots, if we're going to use fractions, remember it said she took 20 shots and made 30% of them. How would I put that into a fraction? What do you think, Izzy?
31 hundredths.
Yeah, I could write 30 hundredths because she made 30% of her shots. Yeah. We're going to leave it at that right now so we can see what we're working with, and you'll see why. So we know that 30% is 30 hundredths. We also know that she took 20 shots, and we want to know how many shots she made. So how would I write that as a fraction? How many shots did they make out of 20? Garrison?
What you could just divide it by
divide
it by 5.
Nope, I want to know what the fraction would be to say how many shots out of 20. So how would I write the fraction for that?
6/20. No, you're asking?
No, I'm not looking for the answer. How many shots is N? That's my variable. Out of, you're right, 20 is going to be on the bottom because there were 20 shots total. So what we want to find is the number of shots that were made. So that's our variable. So N shots out of 20 equals 30%, 30 hundredths. Okay, sometimes, Garrison, we can do it in our head and it's super easy, but we want to know the math behind it so when we get to the hard ones, we know how to set it up. Okay, so the question was, how many shots were made out of 20 And we know that equals 30%, so it equals 30 hundredths. So now we're gonna solve it for n. So we're gonna multiply, because n divided by 20, the opposite of that is multiplying. And we want n by itself, so we're gonna multiply both sides by 20. So that will give us n by itself, because our 20 times divided by 20, it evens out. 30 times 20 would be 60 hundredths. This is why I left the 100 on the bottom, because it's easier to work. It's not 60, it's 600.
Yeah.
Whew, that's what. Oh my goodness, Miss Gambino. So 20 times 30 is 600. So it's 600 divided by 100, we get our easy answer. We can see we can divide 100 out of both, so n equals 6. So now let's look to see how we would do that using percentages. So she took 20 shots and made 30% of them. How many shots did she make? So she made 10% of 20.
No, 30% of 20. Out of 20.
Yeah. So the manual still said 10. So she made 30% of 20 equals 2. So let's walk through this and see. We're gonna leave this as that 10%, and we're gonna see how that was in the manual. And we're gonna work through this manual. So 10% times 3 gets us that 30%. So here, 2 times 3 gets us our 6. So we multiplied 3 to both sides.
It's because it's to get the 10%, so it's easy numbers.
10% is an easy number. So 10% of 20, we know that she got 30%. 30% of 20 isn't always an easy number to work with. Can you work with 10% easily? Yeah, 10% you divide out of 10. 10% of 20 would be that 2, because you're dividing that 10 out. So it's easy to find that percentage. 10% of 20 was an easy one for us that we could do in our head. Because when we're multiplying, so if I have 20 and it's 10%, what I'm doing is multiplying it by that. And I know that it's going to be the 2. So all you have to do is move that decimal over one place. So it's an easy thing that we could do in our head. Mental math is always good, especially when you're at the store. So if we know 10% of 20, we want to know 30%. To go from 10% to 30%, we multiply by 3. Maddie?
So once you have to know the answer, to make it easy.
Well, you have to find the answer.
We have to find the answer, but when we have to know the answer, we have to know that the answer is 6.
We figured it out. Because we knew 10% of 20 was 2, and we wanted to know 30%. So to go from 10% to 30, that's why we multiplied by the 3. Okay? So that's why the multiplying by 3 came in, because we were going from 10% to 30%. So that's why we went from 2 to 6. So now look at the multiplication of it. She took 20 shots and made 30% of them. How many shots did she make? 20 shots times that 30% out of 100. So the 20 times the 30, because she took 20 shots times the 30% she made, and because it's that percentage, we divide it by that 100. We know 20 times 30 is 600. So doing the math, okay? So let's look at the test one. So if we're gonna set it up the same way, thinking through how we set up our shots. For the test was worth 30 points and she got a 90%. How many did she get correct? So we know that 90% is what? 90 hundredths. Right? So remember, we want to get that variable in there. How many did she get correct is what we want to know. Out of how many? It was worth 30 points. So your denominator is always how many total. We don't know how many she got correct, but we know that there was a total of 30. Can you solve for n? Molly?
27/30.
Not quite. So if we have a 30 as our denominator, we want to multiply by 30 and multiply by 30. Yeah, so our 30s even out, so we get n by itself. 90 times 30. There's two zeros here, so it's 2,700 divided by 100, but it's not.
It's 200.
What are we gonna divide out of 2,700 and 100?
100.
What can we divide? What common factor do they share? What's the greatest common factor? 100. So we can divide 100 out of the numerator and the denominator. So 100 divided by 100 is 1. 2,700 divided by 100 is 27. So it's just 27. She got 27 correct. So you were giving me, I see what you're doing. You were giving me the whole fraction. I thought, I'm understanding what you were saying now. It was 27 out of 30. So when you said 27 30ths, that's not the final answer. Because the question is, how many did she get correct? So your answer would just be she got 27 correct. Okay? So now I'm understanding where you were coming from. I was hearing you totally different. Makes sense. So you knew what you were doing. Andrea.
You do the, like, how you get your
Can we talk about that when I'm not? Okay. Let's look at percentages. So the test was worth 30 points and she got 90%. How would we put that as using our percentages? Thinking of how we set it up here, thinking about our easy, what could we set up to be easy? Izzy? Yeah, 10% of 30 equals what? I heard a few of us say it. 10% of 30 would be 3. Because remember, you moved that decimal over one spot. 10% of 30 is 3. 3 times 10 is 30. So knowing that, and knowing that we need to get up to 90%, what am I going to multiply my percentage by? To go from 10% to 90, Ethan? I'm going to multiply by that 9 to get 90%. So if I multiply the percentage by 9, I need to multiply this by 9. 3 times 9 gives me that 27. And now let's look at it with the multiplication. So again, setting it up the same way that we did up top. How would I set that up? Maddie?
You would do 30 times 90 over 100.
30 times 90 over 100. So we know 30 times 90 is 2,700 over 100. Dividing out our 100 gives us our 27. We're going to scroll up. Now the tip one. Using what we did below, on top, how are we gonna set up our tip? If the bill at the restaurant was about $40 and I left a 15% tip, how should I set that up? How do I set up my percentages? Colin? Well, that's the column that fractions. Whew. Yes, you're right. How do I set up the fractions?
10 over 40 equals 15 over 100.
10 over 40 equals 15 over 100, because it was 15%. We don't know how much they left out of the 40. So we want to get that 40 by itself, so we multiply by 40. So we have n, 15 times 40 gives us what?
600.
600?
Yeah.
Over 100. We can divide that 100 out, and we can see that we left a $6 tip. Working with our percentages, we left a 15% tip. Ooh, this one's a little bit more complicated. So let's start at the beginning. What would we write for our percentages? What's an easy percentage to work with? Joseph?
10%.
Yeah, 10% of 40 equals how much?
4.
4. So how do you think we should get to 15%? What do you think, Sam?
You should times it by a half.
We could times it by a half. Let's see if that works. I know. If I times it by a half, that wouldn't get me up to 15%. What could we do? What do you think, Naveen?
Oh, you could divide by a half?
What do you think, Ethan? Multiply by 1.5?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Can I show you guys an easier way?
Yeah. Yes.
Molly?
How I would solve it is you can do 4 times 1, which is 4, and then take half of 4, which is 2, to make 6.
So how did you go from 10% to 15%?
10%.
Yeah. Because you're right, that's how we get 6, but you already knew the answer was 6.
Yeah, but that's how I did it.
Right. But let's see if we can find a way using percentages. Katie?
We could also use 5 instead of 10%.
So we want to get to that 15%. Instead of multiplying to get to 15%, we could add 5%. So that means we need to know what 5% of 40 is. So that's 40 times 5%, right? So 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 4 is 20. We have 2 decimal places. 2 decimal places. 5% of 40 is not 8. 5% of 40 is 2. So 10% plus 5% gives us our 15%. So 4 plus our 2 gives us the 6. That one is a little more complicated. It had another step in it. We had to figure out what that 5% of the 40 was. And then we could add it on. Let's look at our last one, multiplication. Setting it up the same way we set up our other ones. How should I set up $40 with the 15% tip? Nathan?
Multiplication.
Yep.
So do 40 times 15 over 100.
What is 40 times 15? 600 over 100. Simplify down and we get our 6. So each method is not always super easy to use. Sometimes you need to use the one that's going to be the easiest for the problem you're given. We just saw that working with the percentages wasn't the easiest when it was 15%. That one wasn't as easy. It was a little more complicated. So on the bottom of this page, it says, find the following values and show your work. So just being able to find those percentages of that whole number. The next page, binder page 43, is finding the values, showing your work. So yeah, and then solving those word problems. So am I saying you need to use each method? Why do we go over several different methods? Rhino. So people, one, so you can find what's most comfortable for you, what's easiest for you. And two, if your way that you're using isn't so easy, you know a different way to go about getting it. Okay, because maybe working with the percentages was, hey, I get that, I want to do that, and then all of a sudden you get to a 15% and you go, oh my goodness. You know a different way that you could go about getting it. So as you work through these, you only need to do one method. Why might you want to do two methods, especially on the test? Why might you want to do two of the methods, Colin? Check your answer. Okay, it's easy to make simple mistakes. So we teach you several different methods so you can find what works for you, because different brains work differently and we have different comfort levels with the different methods. We can also use it to check our answers. So I am going to say goodbye to our friends at home and hope you have a good day.